This is Veterans Voices with VTC, and the reason for our podcast is to share real stories of strength, survival, and hope. This is the Veterans Transition Center of California. I am your host, Lisa Kincaid, and we've got our producer and co-host, Madison.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good, Maddie. So this is a great day because we've got a couple of guests here that we're so excited to have. They're actually calling in. They're not sitting here with us, which is kind of sad. I'm looking at two empty seats. Really weird.
I know.
But we have Kristen and Dan as our guests today. But before we go into that, I just want to give a couple shout outs here. Well, first of all, this podcast has just really given me a new passion for my job. You know, it really has given me, it's opened my eyes to the experience of the veterans here, and that's why we're here. Our department is fundraising and marketing and outreach, but really it has given me a new passion and new meaning for my job as we've talked with each veteran and heard their personal stories. It's been pretty magical.
Absolutely. They all have just such varying stories, and even the case managers that come along with them, they all have just amazing stories to hear. I love it.
It's really made a difference, and I'm hoping that people that are listening are really are feeling it too. Okay, a couple things. I would like to thank Santa Cruz Voice because they have really brought us into the family, and they are airing our podcast, streaming our podcast on their radio station, santacruzvoice.com, and they air it at 4 p.m. every Wednesday. And you can always listen to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and also our very own website, vtcvoices.org. All of them are listed. You can go back and re-listen to them again. These stories are, like we said, it's very powerful stories of strength, survival, hope, and forgiveness. The one we just recorded earlier is really about gratitude, forgiveness, change, all kinds of powerful things. But anyway, I would like to thank Santa Cruz Voice for really helping us put this together. I'd also like to give a shout out to Bay Federal, who moved into Marina not too long ago, and they have become such a wonderful and incredible partner of VTC, and we just want to thank them. So let's start out by introducing Kristen Scott. Kristen, thank you for being on the program today.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
And you worked for Veterans Transition Center for how long?
5 years.
Oh, wow. 5 years.
Yes, 5 years.
And I miss you, by the way. I just want to say.
I miss you too. I miss everybody at VTC.
Yeah, it hasn't been the same, but there's been a lot of changes here. I think you'd be proud. Can you share a little bit about your military experience and what inspired you to serve in the military?
I wasn't in for very long, and that's because I broke my sternum in the military. And so,
Ouch.
that was sort of my fault. It was one of those things where I was 19 years old and I got in a car accident and the seatbelt broke it. But when I was enlisting in the military, the recruiter said, okay, well, if it doesn't hurt, don't say anything. So I was like, okay, great. So I went in, and but then with all the PT that we had to do, the push-ups, all the stuff, the road marches and things like that, it was broken. So they said, you can go home or you can stay. And I said, no, I'm getting out of here because I wasn't very good at the military. So I was one of those that always left my rucksack in places and always left my Kevlar out and always had to do push-ups because I was always in trouble. So, So I was, my dad was in the military. My dad was in the Air Force when he was in his 20s. And also at the time, I had a couple of other friends that were in the military, but I was also at the time going through kind of a homeless phase where I, was couch surfing. And so but it was I lived in a small town at the time, and I was like, well, I need to do something with my life. And, I need to, I don't just do something. And so I enlisted in the Army.
So I was just going to ask you, so the branch was the Army for you. Okay.
Yes.
And so you said your dad was in the Air Force. How did that impact your life, having that experience and hearing his stories?
My dad was an airplane mechanic. And so I I haven't really heard a lot of stories about the Air Force. So, that didn't really have an impact, but, the impact that it had on me was that, he was really brave and really I looked up to him for serving in the military.
And I'm sure that impacted you when you started in leadership here, right? I mean, when you started working here at VTC.
Well, here's the plot twist. It didn't. So because the thing that impacted me, the most was, at the military did not, shape my leadership at VTC. Really, just being a mom is what shaped my leadership.
Well, I have to vouch for that because it does kind of shape your whole outlook, once you become a parent,
Yeah.
So tell us about how you became. What position did you start out at VTC?
So when I started there November. No, yeah, with November 26th, I think of 2019, and I was hired as the HCHV, the Emergency Housing Case Manager. That's where I started.
And then how did you get into a leadership role?
I was the one with the master's degree at the time.
Ooh. And tell us about your master's degree. Where'd you get your master's degree?
So I have a master's degree in psychology from Purdue Global University, and it is in psychology. But the person who was in the role before me as the program director, she really wanted to keep the role for a woman. So, so I happened to be a woman with a master's degree who she said, didn't take anybody's crap, but was also really fair. So that's how I got that role.
Kristen, can you go more into detail about your role and what you did on a daily basis here as GPD lead?
As the director?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So as I was the GPD, not just the GPD director. I had a larger role in also being the director for the HCHV program and the permanent supportive housing, and then the therapist that was there, but GPD had 3 programs underneath it. Well, it still does. And so I had to, I manage all of those grants and contracts. And also, one of the things that I really missed about being a case manager, though, was that I didn't really get to meet with clients as much and see the veterans. And so I took as much opportunity as I could to meet with the veterans and go down to housing, handle any crises, because I really missed the face-to-face part of being a case manager. So that was another one of my duties there. One of the things that I really enjoyed about, being a director was to also, see the veterans.
We had Francisco on not too long ago, your replacement.
Yes.
And he mentioned the same thing, that he's sad that he doesn't get to go, see everybody anymore. Did you have a hand in picking Francisco to take over?
Yes. Yeah, I did. He was also close to his master's degree. However, Francisco, I know he's one where the military did affect his leadership skills. And I saw the way that Francisco was with the clients, and he just had a really good, he could build rapport with the clients, and build that trust. And so that's the kind of person that I wanted for that role. It didn't have to be female or male. It was somebody who was going to be able to build the rapport with the staff and the veterans.
He has an incredible work ethic, and we love having him on the show. We're going to have him back shortly, I think.
He does.
And his passion for you're right. He does have such great experience of, the brotherhood, the sisterhood that he had in the military, and leading those folks. And so he's definitely brought that into his current role. What would you say were your particular challenges that stood out during your time here, or during your time of leadership here? You had a lot of programs to cover.
Yes. I think one of the hardest things to do in my role was to having to make those decisions when veterans maybe were not doing so well in the program. Some people who maybe like kind of recycle through different programs, and it seems like we can't help them. That was probably the biggest challenge that I encountered. When having to send a veteran to another program and just kind of, maybe they would come back through. That was the hardest part.
But I do have to say that reminds me that we do have a lot of connections and feelers out and relationships with other programs so that we can find something that suits this veteran, which I know we pride ourselves on. So that's one thing I do remember about working with you is that you guys just didn't like say, okay, well, you have to leave. We're going to dump you on the street. I mean, you really did find the right place for them that whether they need additional mental health resources or if they need a hospitalization or something like that, that we were not able to meet their need, is we found a place for them, which I think is, a very cool thing.
Yes. We tried to really avoid that one at all costs, is saying you just have to leave. That was something that I didn't like to do. Yeah. So we would really try, just kind of exhaust all those resources first.
Yeah. So tell us how you're working at VTC. How did that impact your perspective on like service and the community? I'm trying to find currently, because one of the things it really made me want to stay working with veterans in some capacity. One of the things was funny because having served in the military, I did not really ever tell people that I served in the military. It was kind of a quiet thing. I never said anything about it. I didn't think I hadn't been service connected, and I didn't feel like a part of the veteran community because I just kept it quiet that I was in the service. And until one day, Tom Griffin actually said to me, I was telling him about it, and he said, if you raised your hand and you were going to let the military take over your life and do with you what they were going to do with you, you're a veteran. And I was like, what? And Tom Griffin is our board chair and founder, right? Just want to make sure that in case people are listening for the first time.
Yes. And so he really kind of inspired me to, to start pursuing all the veteran things, like, pursuing, like disability, and getting me hooked up with, VSO stuff. And then there was a lot of encouragement from other staff there as well to, say, oh, no, you are a veteran. And kind of, so that kind of inspired me as well to, to work on that, but also just to get, deeper into the veteran community, because I said, like, oh, wow, these really are all my brothers and sisters.
And, that's one thing that we are always so excited to talk about, is that part of our mission is taking the veteran as they are. That means clean or sober, or that also means, 2 days in, 20 years in, the military. So I think that's a powerful testament to the Veterans Transition Center, because they are a part of the family, whether you were in for 2 days or 20 years. So, the respect is there, and it's the human side that makes all the difference, I think.
Yes, I would agree with that.
You left your role here last year. Can you walk us through what led to the decision to leave?
Well, we couldn't. The biggest thing was the house situation mostly. Dan and I had looked at houses around the area. We really liked our jobs there at VTC. We liked the area, but having gotten married and stuff like that, we really wanted to, make a home somewhere. But it was just too expensive in California to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
We're laughing because we're like, I live in Carmel. She lives in Santa Cruz. It's like,
we're still feeling it over here. And you moved to Iowa, right?
Yes.
How's that transition? What other than, pricing on everything, what's it like to live in Iowa?
Well, other than prices, the first thing I'll say about that is it really cracks me up every time somebody here says something about gas prices, because I said, oh, what? I came from California.
$5 a gallon.
How much is it over there?
Yes. What did I pay? I just got gas yesterday, and I think I paid, what did I pay? $2.58.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So jealous.
We should have a music filler for that one. So no, we can't talk about you leaving a VTC without, talking about Dan, because you met your husband here at VTC. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, first of all, we were both Jack Murphy hires. Jack Murphy is at the VSO office. He used to be the deputy director at VTC, and he's a good friend. And so he hired me first, which was a funny story. Can I tell that story fast?
Yes,
of course.
Because so I, at the time I was, this was, when I was, in 2019, and I came in for an interview, and so I had the interview with the program director at the time and Jack, and everything seemed to go well. And Jack said, okay, well, let me show you around. And the program director said, don't you take her down to the HCHV units. Don't take her down to Hayes Circle. And where do we go? Where's the first place we went? Hayes Circle, into the HCHV units. So then we go through there, and we're in the VTC car riding back up to the building. And Jack says, oh, well, okay, well, the job is yours if you want it. So I'm like, great. This is great. Awesome. I'm really excited to work here. So then we get back up to the office, and we go into the program director's office, which was my office and Francisco's office now. And he says, okay, well, she's going to start, like Monday or whatever. And the program director, she said, oh, I didn't know that we'd hired anybody. So,
oh my gosh. Some toes were stepped on ever so gently.
Yes.
Wow.
So that's how I got hired.
That's how you got hired. And then so tell us about how you met Dan.
So Dan got hired in April of 2020. And I, really at the time kind of didn't, it was just, we were just, working as coworkers and stuff like that. So yeah, that's really just, he was also hired by Jack Murphy. That is how we met. Do you want me to, talk about?
You don't have to. It's up to you. How long were you working before you started to notice one another?
Oh, well, I can tell you the first time I really noticed him. That was because it's funny. It's really kind of funny, which was that would be I think at the end of 2021, and we had gone on a tour. We were going on an EUL tour. And
the EUL is a building that we're hoping that we want to transform into new housing, just in case people are listening for the first time.
Yeah. So we had gone to the EUL building. We were on the tour with some new hires and taking them through there. And then we met the lady at the one, I forget the lady's name, that has the keys and opens the door every time there's a tour. But so we went in there, and so anyway, she tried to go through a door, and the door just was sticking and it wouldn't shut, and she couldn't lock it. And so Dan started to aggressively fix this door, and that sealed the deal right there.
Oh my gosh, the heavy door, the tool belt, not a tool belt, but
yeah,
it was awesome.
Really, taking those, those leadership qualities, and just, the solving the problem, and just not afraid to, just take the lead on that one.
Making it happen.
Yeah, making it happen. That was a really attractive quality.
Oh, I love it. That's cool. Well, it was really fun working with the both of you guys. I mean, we really miss you around here. And I think, like I said, I think you'd be proud. We're continuing to grow and continuing to change. And you guys definitely laid the groundwork. So I have to thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about what new and exciting opportunities have come your way since the move.
Well, I am a drug and alcohol counselor now. And so that is where I work. I work at St. Gregory's Recovery Center as an outpatient counselor. So right now I do 15 hours of group a week and then the individual sessions with my clients. And I am starting next Monday back at Liberty University to finish my second master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I have 10 more classes to go and an internship. So I will then have that. I got my drug counseling license since VTC and going to be working on that marriage and family therapy license.
Wow, that's incredible. I had no idea that you were doing all that. What is your dream job? I mean, when this is all said and done, what do you want to do?
Be a therapist.
Okay, so you want to have want to have a private practice?
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. And so obviously you're doing so much. That's a lot. Tell me some things that you brought from this job to your new job, or some special tools or techniques or anything like that that you thought were amazing here that you wanted to continue to implement.
Well, they give me all the veterans for one. That's the way. Every time we don't have many veterans, and what was interesting here, I thought, was they did some kind of a summer pit count, which I wasn't aware that they did anywhere, because Dan and I have only done it in January.
And describe what a pit count is, just in case people don't know.
So a pit count is where you get up really early in the morning at like 4:00 and you sign up for your. Like, you can sign up online which areas that you want to count people in. So like homeless people. So when we've done it Dan and I've done it in the past, I would go online and sign up for which areas we would want to cover. So you get up early in the morning and you have an app that you enter the information on. So if you see a car and maybe there's towels in the windows and, or you see the vehicle kind of packed with a lot of stuff, you would count that as a homeless vehicle. And you would, there's a certain amount, like they would say, like, okay, you could put one person in that vehicle. But if you see like a motorhome or something, you could count 4 people in that vehicle. I mean, by no means is it completely 100% accurate, but it gives us an average, kind of to work on. Data to work with about how many homeless people there are in the area. So they did a summer pit count here, apparently, and they have like 39 homeless veterans in Des Moines. So that is not even comparable to what California looks like in terms of their homeless veterans, because I think last year there was something just in Marina alone, there was like 78. And,
wow.
Yeah, there was a lot of homeless veterans there.
And that's not even counting the ones that we didn't know were veterans.
Right.
During the count.
Yeah. Because when if you can see like a flag on a tent or see a flag on a car, or some kind of veteran, then you would count that as a veteran. So, So anyway, here there's just, there's not a lot of veterans here. But when we get one in our outpatient, they, the boss usually says, "Here, Kristen, here's a veteran." So, So I have, there was one supposed to be coming in, so I'm excited for that, but I don't get them very often. However, where I work, we do have a program called Tactical Recovery, which helps veterans get hooked up with the VA and navigate the VA system, because that can be very difficult.
Well, that sounds familiar, right?
Yeah,
that's what VTC. That's one of the things that we're so excited about, is our case managers are the liaison, right? You guys are the liaison, because it could be a nightmare. And we're hearing that from so many veterans, just the process of not only getting their birth certificate or whatever, but just, and I'm learning about that too. But like when you first met me, I didn't know about any of this stuff. So it's just amazing what they have to go through. So, quick question. I remember, you are very passionate about what you do and your role here at VTC. I remember you took everything very personal. And so for new leaders coming up here at VTC, someone that's becoming from a case manager to a supervisor or whatever, what would your advice be to them here at VTC?
Well, I have 3 pieces of advice, maybe 4. I don't know. The biggest one, would be that be best friends with the VA. That's the biggest one that has really been helpful. Just really treat the VA great. Make that liaison, just be open, and, be willing to change, and be willing to, go to a new direction, because as we know, things just change. Things can change very quickly.
That's number one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's the number one. The second one is if you can fix it yourself, fix it yourself. You want to be best friends with upper management, but you also, don't want to be in their office all the time. So, you have to, lose the drama. That was the big thing.
Yep, that's a good one too, because in any workplace there's drama, and sometimes it just halts the process. We want to do what we can for the veterans, and so
exactly.
and they respect that too, which I appreciate.
Yes.
Is there a third one?
Mm-hmm. Let me see. The third one that's really important is that never think that somebody cannot change. We have a veteran. I say we, so see, I still feel like I'm at VTC. There's a veteran that, we were able to talk to recently down in Light Fighter, and how many times was he in VTC? 8, 9? Yeah, I let him come through VTC. Probably he's on his 9th time right now, and he is finally has been successful.
Oh, wow.
So don't ever think that somebody cannot change just because, maybe they've been through so many programs, and, because you don't know that, maybe the one time it's finally going to sink in, they're finally going to get it. They're finally going to be successful.
And, that's a good one, because we've actually had a veteran here that didn't know he could come back, and found out from someone else that he had a friend that actually came back for a second or third time. Could have even been the person you're talking about. But knowing that this is an open door, that they can come back anytime if they decide to quit the program, or even graduate from the program and find themselves in hard times, they can come back and get the same level of care and service and support. Yeah.
Yep. And even if sometimes, even if they left, one of the things that was important to me was that even if they left on poor terms, whether there was, it was some kind of, as everybody knows, there's no, assault allowed in the housing or anything like that. Even if they left on bad terms, then, sometimes, that's one of the program director's jobs, is to be able to have a conversation with those veterans and discuss how things are going to be different, kind of talk about what led up to it, how we can change things, and how it will be different so that they can be successful in the program. And we have seen some people come back from that where, maybe they left in a police car, but, then they came back and really got their stuff together and, were able to get housed.
We're all about second and third and fourth chances. That's for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
No, those are great pieces of advice. And I'm sure anybody in leadership who's listening there could definitely learn something. I especially love the last one, saying, come back. You need help. We're here.
Yeah.
Next, we'd like to introduce Dan Scott. Dan, while I was here, Dan was our intake coordinator. Hi, Dan.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
Hi, Dan. Thanks for being on the program.
My pleasure. Thanks for asking me to be here.
Of course. Thank you for coming. We hear so many great stories about both of you from a lot of the veterans who have both been on the podcast and haven't been on yet.
That's nice.
That's nice. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your military experience?
Sure. I enlisted very early, right out of high school. The same day I graduated, I was picked up by a recruiter and went to Fort Benning, Georgia to be in the infantry. And I stayed there for 3 years and served as a infantryman.
At what branch of the military?
I was in the Army, and I did go more than one place. I did some state time and then some time abroad.
And so how many years were you in the Army?
3 years. I was 17 when I went in, and I got out when I was 20.
Wow. And you started off here at VTC as a resident, right?
That's correct. I was a homeless veteran, came through the front doors of the transition center and sat down and participated in the process that I later on would be a part of in other homeless veterans' experiences.
Do you think the military and kind of transitioning out might have had an effect on you ending up homeless or may have led down that path?
Sure, I had some tough times in the military. I had some injuries that were significant, and I left the military an active alcoholic, and there were some consequences that happened with that in my life. And so adjusting to, and I also wanted to be in the military longer, and it was cut short due to some injuries. And those experiences sort of derailed my plan of doing 20 years in the military. And I never really felt comfortable about that because that's what I wanted to do. And so there was a lot of regret and shame around that. And so my coping skills primarily were is keep it to myself and drank alcohol. And that just snowballed. And coming to VTC was a turning point for me.
Can you go into more detail about what it was like stepping into VTC and, how it changed your life?
Right. It was a late afternoon when I was doing the intake at VTC. I immediately felt hope and a part of coming into Martinez Hall. And it was a fast moving pace, which I liked. We immediately got down to doing paperwork and some introductions and getting the basics covered so that I could be assigned to a housing unit and get a bedroom and get settled in for the first night. And that all happened with a lot of professionalism from the case managers and the staff, and the other residents that were there at the time were very welcoming, and they all had, a sense of hope themselves. I didn't know that there was that many homeless veterans there. I wasn't sure of how big the program was. And within 24 hours of getting there, they started to get a to-do list of what we were going to do and accomplish. And that looked like going to the VA, enrolling in VA healthcare, showing up for case management, going to community meetings, finding out where the food pantry was at, finding out what community cleanup was going to look like, finding out how there was opportunities to volunteer within the community of Marina and the county of Monterey while at VTC. And so there was just a whole lot coming down the pipeline as a new resident. And I just accepted it and volunteered and raised my hand for anything and everything that was available.
And what would you say, Dan, when you look back, because you went from being a part of our program to being a leader of veterans and helping them and being able to share your own experience, I'm sure helped you in your leadership style. But what are the most important tools that that really impacted you the most, and also probably saw in other people when they came through?
Well, most of the staff at the Veteran Transition Center were former military. And so there was a sort of undercurrent of structure in regards to that there, which I really thrive in. And the veterans that come there more often than not are tapping back into that sort of military part of their life and trying to find their best self in that space while they're at VTC. And they may have personal barriers and struggles, but if there's one thing that's common that the veteran there can do is remember that they served and that those were their proudest moments, and that finding that sort of energy and part of ourselves again can be a real great foundation to work from, and to just remember that, our greatest moments were when we took the oath and we were in uniform and we served our country, be it if we went overseas or if it was just stateside, if you were in combat, if you weren't in combat, if your career was cut short for some reason or not. Just, it didn't really matter, all of those factors. It was the sense of pride and how much you glow when you have that uniform on, when you're first, part of the United States military, which is just a very, very cherished thing to be a part of. And so you learn from being in the service, structure, organizational skills, leadership skills. I was given leadership skills very early on, and those skills were apparent to the chain of command in the Army. And so I was an example for older soldiers. Of course, that created some challenges in itself, but we worked through those. And I just used all of the skills that I learned in the service and applied them to what I was doing at VTC, which was bringing veterans into a structured program that was going to have reasonable expectations and agreements that we would come to both agree on, and that I was fair, but I was also very candid and forthright with the veteran, and would often share my personal experience with veterans if it seemed appropriate, to try to help them get over the idea that I'm in a hopeless situation and you don't know how it's like to be what I'm going through right now, and et cetera, et cetera. And quite often I would take veterans down to the housing and house them. And I would say, I used to live in that room right there. Or, I live down on Hayes Circle, and I'm going to take you to a unit that I lived in fact, my old room. And the opening up of possibility for a veteran to hear that is almost invaluable. They go from a sense of just, you don't know what it's like. You're not in my shoes. How could you ever know what my story is? And I didn't use that experience with every veteran, but with those that seemed that they would benefit from it, it was always an opportunity to meet somebody really on a human to human level, and let them weep and sit with them while they let stuff out that's just been tormenting them. And if need be, get emergency services there, because being the initial point of contact for veterans in crisis, be it if I was going in the field to find a veteran, or if they finally had the courage to come into the office and sit down and unpack some of their stuff, is very powerful. And veterans are proud individuals that are instilled with self-reliancy that becomes almost a barrier to be able to get help, because that's just weakness, and you can't have that when you're mission orientated and just trying to get the shift to where we're just here to give you a hand up and not a handout. It's just, you've earned this. The Veterans Affairs wants you to be indoors, housed, not homeless. And I personally want you to be a part of a program that helped change my life, and just have that conversation outside of all the paperwork and all of the formality and the do's and the don'ts, because it can sound like you're going into boot camp a little bit coming into VTC when you get the agreement package. And we want to just try to soften that and let folks know that we have to have structure when we have so many people cohabitating together. It's the only way it works. But we'll also understand people are human, and we'll find solutions for the challenges that came up. And using other staff members and their experience was always a benefit. the great Bobby Merritt works there, and he's been there for a long time. And he would often be somebody I would soundboard scenarios in the early morning with him and get some feedback from him. Kristen and I collaborated daily on the goings-ons with certain veterans so that we could coordinate interventions and any sort of supportive services that might be able to be used, or to how to tackle an emergency situation that required a higher level of care. So just doing all that kind of work right there. And Jack is a longtime mentor of mine, and there's a lot that can be learned from him and people like him. So all of that played a part in that.
It's got to be inspiring to be able to look up to somebody and ask them questions who just went through what you're going through, and to know that the person you're working with to better your life does in fact know what you're going through and can properly guide you. So it's really great that you were able to do that for our veterans. Can you go through a little bit more the day-to-day life of being in the program? So, getting used to living in the housing, using the food pantry, clothing closet, all that stuff.
Sure. So, the transition center has, in the 10 years since I've been there, it has grown and become much more efficient and more thoughtful in many ways. I mean, I'm great for everything that was provided to me there and for how it was being, how it was being
like disseminated or
just how the daily, how it was, operating at the time. But the changes, like when new arrivals came after I had been there a while in the job, we would have a welcoming basket, which was just a very nice welcoming touch. When I first arrived there, I had bedding that had been washed and it was in a black bag, and I was grateful to have it. And I went to an old house that had clothing in it and went through that clothing until I found things that fit me that was donated from the community, and got to go down to the house that first night. And, we're blessed that VTC can provide brand new sheets for every veteran that's coming in there. And that just says a lot for the dignity of the veteran, that they're starting out on something fresh, something that, only they've laid on. And that may be the first time they've done that in months, days, years, or decades. And it just is very meaningful. I would go down and lay all the things out for the veteran in the room quite often before they would get there, maybe even make the bed and just do those kinds of soft touches. Those things weren't really happening when I got there. However, I was still just in, high cotton. I was like, man, this is the best there is. And so we immediately start to figure out how to interact and how to live with each other when you have 3 or 4 other veterans living in a house together, and how we're going to, find compromise with bathrooms and cooking areas, and just started having interpersonal relationships with fellow veterans who were not strangers because we're veterans. But so breaking down those sort of walls and just being able to communicate and have community with one another. There was a community house down on Hay Circle, and, we had movies in there and some games, and we would have barbecues there. And so quite often we would gather there and just hang out and share stories with one another, mostly always about our service. People weren't real interested about what your homelessness looked like. It was always talking about our time in service, what serving was like, where we had been, stories about what that looked like. And that would be the same I was the youngest one in the house I was in, and we had gentlemen in the house that were in their later 70s that I was in. So many generations of veterans. And we would get up early, we would make our beds, we would have breakfast, we would go for a walk, we would get up to VTC and be in line for the food pantry. and get our rations and then bring those back to the house. There would be community opportunities for volunteering and making some money, which was great because you could then start working on some self-sufficiency. You would meet with the housing manager and get your housing arrangement set up and start understanding what it was like to start paying part of your income to rent. And we would start having community meetings, and we would start having community engagement on Hay Circle for cleaning up the community and weekly case management. So as long as you were doing all of those things or enrolling in school and going to the VA and participating in therapy and groups and going to Palo Alto on the shuttle that is provided, all the wraparound services for a homeless veteran to be going from being on the outside of the circle to landing right dead in the middle of the circle, and then all the spokes of support that come out of that. You almost are overwhelmed with all of the options, and or you could sit and hide out in your room and do the bare minimum. And that's where good housemates would try to encourage a fellow veteran to come out to the living room or come and watch a movie, or let's go to the beach over in Marina, or how about we go get some lunch, and just try to pull those folks out of their isolation a little bit, because so many veterans tend to use isolation as a coping mechanism for stress and trauma and feeling bad about themselves and their choices and the outcomes and just everything. And so we had a lot of isolation even then with veterans, and doing wellness checks on them just as housemates was always important. Yeah, I've seen you today, and taking the time and, hey, why don't we go to the pantry together? Are you going up there later? Yeah, I am. When you get your first vehicle at VTC, you often become everyone's best friend, as you could imagine, because people want to go places and whatnot. And that just becomes another opportunity to be useful to a vet. I can take you to the VA today and drop you off, and you don't have to worry about it, And I just liked the accountability of having a room and being in a house and having a case manager and having all of those, the VA liaison and everybody that was involved in a part of the 6 months that I was a resident there, that helped me just sort of get really goal orientated and be able to be successful there and, participate in the program for 6 months and then be permanently housed at 6 months after being at VTC.
It's interesting when I think about, I'm hearing your story, and it's like, we don't just have case managers here. So you don't just have a case manager. You really do have a community of not only the veterans that you're possibly living with, or the staff here at VTC, or in a group session of some sort. There really is that feeling of a family and that support system, which I think is pretty powerful about what VTC offers. As a case manager, tell us some stories that stick in your mind, or most rewarding moments that stick out in your mind from your experience as a case manager with a veteran.
Yeah. I started as an intake coordinator and then stuck around long enough to move into a supervisoral role and took on more responsibilities, which involved the housing component of the veterans. And so I went from just bringing them in initially and turning them over to the leadership at the time, case managers and director, to where I was the one that would place the veteran as appropriately as I could in the housing, that from the information that was available and the dynamics of the house and the individuals in the house and the sort of just trying to put people in the best fit. And that became very challenging, but it allowed me to really stay on top of what was going on with the veterans in the community and the housing down there, and having veterans feel safe enough to be able to let me know, things that needed to be shared so that we could keep people safe and that we could make housing adjustments or check in on folks a little bit more, because at the end of the day, the veteran living with the veteran is the best source of what's going on in the house with the veterans.
Yeah.
They build the trust there first. The first, the first time that I worked with a veteran, that I turned around and went to try to get shoes for him, and I guess I took too long to try to find those shoes. I came back, and he was under the influence that day we met, and he just bolted and he had left. And I was trying all I could to try to find a pair of shoes. He was living under the Monterey Pier down at the wharf, and he was struggling with alcoholism. And I did not see that veteran for another year. And when he came back, I remembered him clearly, and we did the intake packet, and he was ready to come into the program and give it a shot. And we had reminisced about the prior time he was there. And, I gave him a backpack. He wasn't wanting housing then. He didn't want to be a part of a program. He didn't want to go, quote unquote, follow rules. I always tried to reframe that into, these are agreements. People hear what they want to hear. And they just don't want that restriction on themselves. But he had suffered enough, and he had done enough time outdoors to where he had came back a year later and was ready to commit. And so we had the opportunity to get him in, which was great. And he had quit drinking. So he found a way to put that behind him. And when he got housed, that was absolutely a memorable moment for me, because he was one of the first veterans I helped the case manager physically move into his own dwelling.
Oh
after
man,
being
that's
homeless on
amazing.
the streets.
That is
And
amazing.
so that just snowballed into, at that time, myself and the case manager pretty much were instrumental in moving. If a case manager's client was getting ready to get housed, I had brought every veteran into VTC. So every one of them that I helped move into a permanent housing was just a beautiful moment to see them just operating and wanting to share their place with you, and just reminisce on my own experience of when I was moved out of VTC, and how folks, helped me move my stuff out of the house, move into my new place. And then full circle, here I'm experiencing it with veterans who, maybe 6 months, a year, or up to 2 years prior. I mean, we keep veterans there, for up to 24 months at times.
Yeah.
And it takes that long sometimes to get people in the right, the right space to be able to get them safely into housing to where it's going to work for them.
And sorry to interrupt, because we have literally about 30 seconds left, but I just want to bring this back around, because, that's what VTC is all about. And that's going to be your story forever, wherever, the next step is for you. And I have to say, I just really appreciate you guys coming on today. Even though you're not here anymore, we miss you. You definitely left your mark and your legacy here. And because of what you left behind, we're able to create some nice stepping stones for case management and supervisors and directors here. So thank you guys so much for coming on our podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad. We want to have you back. So this is Veterans Voices with VTC, real stories of strength, survival, and hope. Don't forget to check out our website. If you are a veteran in need, you can find us at vtcofcalifornia.org. And don't forget to listen to our podcast, vtcvoices.org. Thanks again.